Welcome back to our channel where we dive deep into the heart of Port Charles. Today is a beautiful day to unravel the complex web of family, loyalty, and danger that keeps us all captivated. We have spent decades watching the residents of this town fight for their loved ones, and the current storylines are testing those bonds in ways we have rarely seen before. I want to talk about a situation that has completely shattered my heart and left me on the edge of my seat. A situation involving the youngest generation of our beloved legacy families, stepping right into the crosshairs of unimaginable danger. It is impossible to look at young Danny Morgan and not see the ghosts of his family's past echoing in his every reckless decision. We have watched Danny grow from a sweet child into a young man desperately searching for an anchor, and that anchor has always been his father, Jason Morgan. Jason's prolonged absences have always left a void in Port Charles, but for Danny, that void is a gaping wound that refuses to heal. I find myself watching this boy and feeling a profound sense of sorrow because he is acting out of pure grief and longing. When a young man is deprived of his father, especially a father with the legendary status of Jason Morgan, he will inevitably take matters into his own hands. Danny has inherited Jason's fearless nature, but tragically, he lacks the seasoned, tactical restraint his father developed over decades of surviving the mob underbelly. This volatile combination of bravery and desperation has now pushed Danny into making a decision that could unravel the lives of everyone he holds dear. The sheer audacity of Danny attempting to break into the WSB office is something that left me breathless. I had to pause and ask myself, what could possibly drive a teenager to infiltrate a highly secured global intelligence agency? The answer, of course, is a desperate hope that the WSB holds the key to contacting Jason. Danny's mind, clouded by the singular goal of finding his father, completely underestimated the lethal reality of the organization he was tampering with. This was not a simple act of teenage rebellion. It was a misguided, highly dangerous espionage mission executed by a boy who is in way over his head. I could feel the tension radiating through the screen as Danny navigated the shadows of that office, every step bringing him closer to a trap he could not possibly comprehend. It is a tragic reflection of how the sins and secrets of the parents are inevitably passed down to the children, forcing them to navigate a treacherous world long before they are ready. When Danny was inevitably caught and arrested, the collision between his reckless youth and the hardened, ruthless machinery of the WSB was devastating to witness. Being apprehended by an organization that operates above the law is a nightmare scenario for anyone, let alone a teenager. I watched his bravado crumble, replaced by the stark, terrifying realization that he had stepped into a nightmare from which he could not simply walk away. The WSB does not play by the rules of the Port Charles Police Department, and they certainly do not show mercy to intruders, regardless of their age or pedigree. Danny's arrest was a harsh wake-up call, a brutal introduction to the consequences of playing in a world dominated by lethal operatives. It made me wonder how much of this trauma will permanently alter his psyche, much like the traumas that shaped his father's life over the years. Thank goodness for Alexis Davis. When Alexis arrived on the scene, I felt a collective sigh of relief, even though I knew the battle was just beginning. Alexis is a woman who has been battered by life, currently enduring the agonizing isolation of losing Christina to distance and Molly to a devastating familial betrayal. Yet, when her grandson was in peril, every ounce of her fierce, protective maternal instinct flared to life. Seeing her step into the role of a ferocious grandmother defending her blood against the WSB was truly a marvel. She did not just arrive as a lawyer, she arrived as a matriarch, willing to burn the world down to protect her family. She fiercely scolded Danny for his monumental foolishness, but she simultaneously threw a protective shield over him, standing between her grandson and the looming threat of the authorities. The true terror of this situation, however, lies in the man standing across from Alexis, Ross Cullum. I have watched many villains come and go in Port Charles, but Cullum possesses a brand of sadistic, unchecked ruthlessness that chills me to the bone. We already know he is orchestrating the violent captivity of Liesl Obrecht and Jocelyn Jacks. When Cullum decided not to press charges against Danny, I did not feel relief. I felt a deep, terrifying dread. Why would a man like Cullum simply let an intruder walk away? The answer is chillingly clear to anyone who has watched these manipulative games play out over the years. Cullum is not showing mercy. He is making a calculated, strategic move. By releasing Danny, he is planting a seed of psychological terror, knowing that a frightened teenager is far more useful to him out in the open than locked in a holding cell. Alexis, with her years of experience dealing with the darkest elements of society, saw right through this facade. Her warning to Danny was one of the most chilling moments I have witnessed recently. She looked her grandson in the eye and tried to impress upon him the sheer, unadulterated danger that Ross Cullum represents. I could feel the desperate urgency in her voice as she tried to make Danny understand that he was no longer playing a game. She warned him that Cullum is a man who destroys lives without a second thought, a man who operates in the shadows and leaves a trail of devastation in his wake. But I have to ask myself, can a teenager truly comprehend the gravity of such a warning? Can Danny, who has grown up hearing stories of his invincible father, truly understand that he is now a pawn in a lethal game of chess designed to break him? The aftermath of this encounter has left Danny deeply traumatized, and it is this psychological obsession with Cullum that worries me the most. The fear that Cullum instilled in him is acting like a poison, warping his judgment and heightening his paranoia. Danny is now looking over his shoulder, consumed by the terrifying reality that a WSB operative could strike at any moment. This kind of intense, relentless pressure is enough to break a seasoned adult, let alone a boy who is already drowning in grief for his missing father. I fear that this obsession will be his undoing, leading him to make another catastrophic mistake out of sheer panic. When fear takes the wheel, logic and loyalty are often the first casualties. And Danny is currently driving blind through a storm of his own making, utterly consumed by the haunting shadow of Ross Cullum. This brings me to my greatest fear, the very real possibility that Danny's trauma will lead him to accidentally reveal Rocco's location. We know that Rocco and Britt Westbourne are currently on the run, desperately trying to stay one step ahead of Cullum and the WSB's massive manhunt. Danny, in his panicked, compromised state, is a walking liability. All it would take is one slip of the tongue, one intercepted message, or one moment of misplaced trust for Danny to inadvertently hand Cullum the exact coordinates of his targets. I am terrified that Danny, trying to fix the mess he has created, will try to reach out to Rocco to warn him, only to lead the wolves directly to their door. It is a classic, heartbreaking tragedy in the making, where the attempt to save a loved one is precisely what dooms them to a terrifying fate. If Danny accidentally exposes Rocco, the ripple effect will be absolutely catastrophic. Britt has sacrificed everything to protect Rocco, going on the run and giving up her life to keep him safe. If Cullum finds them, her sacrifice will have been in vain. Britt is a fierce protector, but she is up against an organization with infinite resources and a complete disregard for human life. I cannot bear the thought of Britt and Rocco being cornered by a monster like Cullum, all because a terrified teenager made a fatal error in judgment. The bond that Britt and Rocco have formed on the run has been a rare glimmer of hope in these dark times, and seeing it shattered by Cullum's violence would be a devastating blow to all of us who have rooted for their survival and prayed for their safe return to Port Charles. Furthermore, the danger does not stop with Britt and Rocco. This expanding web of peril threatens to ensnare Dante and Lulu as well. Dante is already investigating the bizarre medical anomalies surrounding Drew and Brennan, trusting his deep detective instincts to uncover the truth. If his son Rocco is suddenly thrust into the immediate crosshairs of the WSB, Dante will drop everything and charge headfirst into the line of fire. Dante is a brilliant cop, but a father fighting for his child is a man who will take fatal risks. And then there is Lulu, who is holding on to a profound, world-shattering secret alongside Rocco. If Cullum's hunt exposes this secret, Lulu could find herself targeted by forces she cannot possibly defend against. The entire Falconeri and Spencer families are standing on the edge of a precipice, and Danny Morgan is the one holding the fraying rope. The stakes have escalated to a point where we are genuinely facing the threat of 2 potential deaths. This is not just dramatic hyperbole, this is the grim reality of dealing with Ross Cullum. Cullum has already proven he is willing to murder without a second thought. If he corners Rocco and Britt, or if Dante and Lulu get in his way, he will not hesitate to pull the trigger. Who will pay the ultimate price for Danny's reckless break-in? Could we lose Britt, who has fought so hard for redemption? Could Dante fall in the line of duty while trying to save his son? The thought of losing 2 beloved characters to this senseless violence is a heavy burden for longtime viewers to carry. We have mourned too many favorites over the years, and the dread of another tragic funeral in Port Charles is palpable and entirely terrifying. In the midst of this suffocating darkness, there is only one beacon of hope that I can see, and that is the potential, desperate return of Jason Morgan. If Jason were to return early, stepping out of the shadows just as Cullum closes in, it would ignite a massive explosion of renewed trust and hope. Jason possesses the tactical brilliance and lethal skill set to neutralize a threat like Ross Cullum. I find myself praying for that stoic, unyielding gaze that promises retribution for anyone threatening his family. Jason's return would not just be a physical rescue, it would be a profound emotional salvation for Danny, proving that his father will always come back for him. Until that happens, we are left to watch and wait as the tension builds to an unbearable crescendo. Alexis is fighting a war on multiple fronts, shielding her grandson from a monster, and Danny is ticking like a time bomb, completely unaware that his next move could trigger a massacre. It is a storyline that perfectly captures the heart and soul of General Hospital, a terrifying blend of fierce family loyalty and the enduring hope that love will conquer the darkest evils. I will be watching every moment, hoping our beloved characters survive the storm breaking over Port Charles.